Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. I hope you've been enjoying the course so far. Now we come to what I find to be the most interesting, exciting series of lectures in the course. And we're just going to let it unfold. But I think that this part, more than anything else, presents absolutely compelling evidence for intelligent design within the genetic code. And I've titled this section Code Within a Code, Multilayered Information. And if I am able to do my job correctly, that title will make some sense and inspire some awe at the end of this subseries of lectures, God willing. In the previous few lectures, I think we made a pretty compelling case that the information within DNA could not possibly have arisen by accident. But that information that we were talking about is linear information. What do I mean by that? I mean that there is a long line of code within the DNA using what is now very familiar to us, the four-letter alphabet, and the ordering of the DNA letters specifies the ordering of amino acids in a protein, as we've covered in some detail. This is just linear information. You read the code and it directly corresponds to the order of amino acid base pairs. But it turns out that DNA is much, much, much more sophisticated than that. Not only does the code cover the ordering of the bases of DNA, but that exact same code also simultaneously performs numerous other functions. So there are multiple messages within each code. It is not that the code simply has the single job of specifying the identity and order of amino acids. Yes, it does have that job, but it simultaneously also has multiple, what we may call hidden messages or layered messages using that same code. And even if after all we've said so far, you believe that the linear information could have arisen by accident, I think once you see that there's a code hidden within a code, hidden within a code, hidden within a code, that is impossible to achieve accidentally. Let me try to start with a visual example so that we get a feel for what is meant by code within a code. So one beautiful example of this is the practice of steganography. And steganography is hiding a code within an image. And this is I would want to say, centuries old practice for how to transmit secret codes. But let's take a look, and this is from the Wikipedia article on steganography. You see there the image of a tree. You look at it, and all of the pixels are coding for this image of a tree. But those exact same pixels also carry a hidden code, and as the Wikipedia article says, this is the image of a tree with a steganographically hidden image, and the hidden image is revealed by removing all but the two least significant bits of each color component within a pixel, and then you normalize the image left over. And so you see that the hidden image is the image of a cat hidden within the image of the tree. And so it is basically a message within a message, a code within a code, and we will see that DNA does this in the most superb fashion. Not just one code hidden within the DNA code, but multiple codes hidden within the DNA code. And the more we learn, the more remarkable it becomes. Okay, so over the last couple of decades, papers started appearing in the scientific literature that began to uncover and detail this multi-layering of information in DNA, the code within a code property. And so if one were willing to believe that you could throw together a bunch of random color pixels and generate the image of a tree, like the tree we saw with the steganography example, we've already shown mathematically that to do that and synthesize a random protein is essentially impossible. Um, but even if one were willing to believe that, I think we would all be very hard pressed to believe that we could randomly select colored pixels and generate a picture of a tree with also a multi-layered information embedded there with a hidden picture of a cat. But that is precisely what DNA does. And so here's a paper that we have already run across when we talked about the optimality of the genetic code, but it's also very relevant here from Genome Research in 2007. And its title really essentially says it all. The genetic code is nearly optimal for allowing additional information within protein coding sequences. So let's read the abstract together. DNA sequences that code for proteins need to convey, in addition to the protein coding information, several different signals at the same time. These quote-unquote parallel codes include binding sequences for regulatory and structural proteins, signals for splicing, and RNA secondary structure. Here we show that the universal genetic code can efficiently carry arbitrary parallel codes much better than the vast majority of other possible genetic codes. This property is related to the identity of the stop codons. So we'll ignore that last sentence because it gets into the details of their scientific work, but the take-home message is that not only is the genetic code multi-layered, but that it is optimally structured to allow it to do this. So again, in the same issue of Genome Research, paper and commentary called Evolution and Multilevel Optimization of the Genetic Code. And again, just the first couple of lines of the abstract gives us the message. The discovery of the genetic code was one of the most important advances of modern biology. But there is more to a DNA code than protein sequence. DNA carries signals for splicing, localization, folding, and regulation that are often embedded within the protein coding sequence. So let's stop there. But again, we now see the discovery of this amazing facet of DNA, code within a code. And let's end this brief introductory lecture to this topic of code within a code by looking at a paper published way back in 1989 called The Multiple Codes of Nucleotide Sequences. This was published in the Bulletin of Mathematical Biology. And let's just go ahead and read a little bit together the abstract. It says nucleotide sequences carry genetic information of many different kinds, not just instructions for protein synthesis, which is the triplet code that we've seen. Several codes of nucleotide sequences are discussed, including the translation framing code, responsible for correct triplet counting by the ribosome during protein synthesis, the chromatin code, which provides instructions on appropriate placement of nucleosomes along the DNA molecule and their spatial arrangement, and a putative loop code for single-stranded RNA protein interactions. So basically, I know that that's a lot of jargon, but it begins to introduce some of the topics that we will discuss in the next couple of lectures, some of the specifics of code within a code. That's why I wanted to show this paper. The second is, you notice it was published early, 1989, and I want to draw attention to the author, Edward Trifonov. We will encounter him later. Edward Trifonov was really a pioneer in discovering this code within a code structure of DNA, and that is why his paper is so early compared to many of the others, because he was at the forefront. So I just wanted to mention his name and look at some of the topics that we will be discussing. I know I could just end the entire topic here, that, hey, DNA has a code within a code, and this really speaks to intelligent design, because you can't do that randomly. But once again, I hope my firm belief is correct, that there are people there who want some detail, who are hungry for a little bit more depth. And I never mean to use the Lord's name in vain, but I really like the saying that God is in the details, because I think that when we start to plumb and explore the details, that really is when we see the supreme intelligence behind this design. So please join us for the next lecture and the one after that and the one after that, and we really hope that you will be getting something out of this series, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.